Circuits Society Webinars for Young Excellence Program. My name is Alireza Yousefi, and I'm an SSCS Young Professionals Committee member. I'm here to tell you about our committee activities and specifically our online mentoring program. Young professionals and students are more than 30% of our overall membership, and they are the future of our society. As the Young Professionals Committee, we are trying to address the different needs and interests of our younger members with initiatives like this webinar series or our mentoring programs that I will briefly talk about in the following slides. Our mentoring programs are built upon our committee core value, providing guidance and resources for our young professionals and students to excel at their current and future professional life. As you might be aware of, we have been organizing micro-mentoring sessions in SSCS-sponsored conferences. And our next online mentoring event will be on Monday, February 15th, as a part of ISCC with 24 mentors from academia and industry. Please check the conference website for more information. We have launched an online mentoring platform last year in spring 2020. With this platform, you can connect with mentors and mentees from all over the world at your own pace and time. On the next slide, let me give you more details on this and how it works. In Kronos, a well-known online mentoring software, once you sign up and fill out the forms on your background and interests, you will use an intuitive user interface to connect with other mentors and mentees. The program is driven by the mentees, meaning that first it proposes the best matching mentors to the mentee. Then the mentee chooses her or his mentor and sends a connection request. If the mentor accepts that request, the two start a 6-month mentoring session. During this period, the mentor helps the mentee based on his or her needs and interests. To give you some statistics and KPI from the first round, 75 mentors and 105 mentees had registered by the end of the 6-month program. With this number of users, we reached close to 40 connections. Based on our closing survey, 92% of the users were very satisfied with the program. And now we are about to kick off our second round of mentorship. And I'm here to invite each and every one of you to join the next round of our online mentoring program. Please go to the address sscsmentoring.kronos.com and sign up. Going back to the webinars for Young Excellence, it is a webinar series dedicated, but of course not limited, to young professional members. This series complements the monthly SSCS webinar program that focuses on the technical tutorials and developments. Here you see a list of our previous talks, the recordings of which are all available on SSCS YouTube channel. And with this, I'd like to end my intro. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Alireza. I now invite Ka-Meng Lee to make a few remarks and introduce our speaker.
After a successful career with SSCS pioneer Marcel Pelgrom. So presented by Dr. Marcel Pelgrom. This webinar will be arranged into 2 parts. First will be the interview with Marcel, and the second part is the Q&A session. We will select questions from the Q&A section of the WebEx, so you can use the Q&A section on your dashboard to ask your questions. So let's begin our webinar today and welcome Marcel.
Thank you very much.
To begin with.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ka-Meng. Thank you very much, Abira and Young Professionals Committee to invite me. Big questions without real answers. This is the first time that I talk a bit about my own career, and that's going to be, a new experience. I am from the Netherlands, so let's start with that. Next slide. Ka-Meng. So the Netherlands is there in that little yellow circle. The US is on this map roughly of equal size, but in reality somewhat bigger. We have a monarchy, a king, a queen. We have already an ex-queen, and we have even two spare queens. That's going to be okay. So that's the Netherlands. Small country, but as you could see already on the previous slides, that both Bram Nauta, Kofi Makinwa, and to a certain extent on the edge of the circle is where Boris Moorman has been grown up. So that's still a region with quite a bit of people that you probably know. Next slide. So that's the Netherlands, a little bit more detailed. I am from the eastern part, so I was born near Arnhem. You may know the famous movie A Bridge Too Far. Now that was the bridge that I had to cross when I went to high school. So, but then by then the bridge was repaired. I can tell you that. Yeah. Well, I studied Polytechnical, so I got my bachelor there. Then the Queen at that moment requested my presence in the military, and so I could study in the university. And when I was 23, I started my my bachelor there. But then it went pretty fast. So in 1979, I entered Philips Research, that is in Eindhoven, and I married with Elizabeth. So in 2 years we will celebrate our 40th marriage date. We have 2 daughters. In 1988, I took a little bit strange route to a PhD because in 9 years I had published quite a bit of stuff on certain topics, and in a year of writing I could combine that into a PhD and could successfully defend that. Then after that, I started more or less the management ladder. I became a team leader for ADCs in Philips. Then for 7 years, I was a department head for the entire mixed signal portfolio research. After that, I went to Stanford, which I still like to visit every now and then. And then up to 2013, I stayed into industry. But then it was my 60th birthday, and I said to my wife, it's time that I start something else. And since then, I'm doing all kinds of consulting. I'm teaching in different universities, and so that's a bit my career and overview. And just to give you a few pictures, can we have the next slide? So, coming, next slide. So this is one. So that's the slide. That's where my mixed signal department. 4 or 5 of the group became professors. Bram Nauta was here. Different Leuven were here. Well, we had quite a bit of things done in that period. So USB 2. You might know that this plug that is on the side of your computer, that was basically done in this group. The first polymer circuits, Sigma Delta for radio, was started here. We had in total 27 ISSCC publications in those 7 years, and we needed for that 30 submissions. So acceptance rate of 90%, which I think those who ever try to publish on ISSCC will agree that's not a bad score. Yeah. Next slide. So that's Stanford. You might recognize on the left Professor Boris Moorman and his team, and Posjan is there, also one of the organizers of this committee. Next slide. So this is a bit my private life. My wife is a microelectronics engineer. She is specialized in non-volatile memories, and at my age, it's good to have somebody who has a really good memory, because mine is going to disappear slowly. My 2 daughters both have a PhD in biochemistry. are working in industry together with their respective husbands, and in total we are already there are already 3 grandchildren. So we are a very, very lucky and fortunate family. Well, I'm a lousy chess player. When I was very young, I played for the Dutch Youth Championship, but at this moment I'm really only a 1700 rating player, so that's really lousy. I have a big garden, and I do an A to D book every now and then. And next slide, there's of course another hobby, which is writing columns, and answering the questions. I will every now and then refer to a column where you might want to read it a little bit more. Next slide. And yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Next, yeah, that's one. So, Kameng, you read the first question.
Yeah, so that's a wonderful begin with your background. So let's start with the career navigation first, as I believe is an important step to choose to start a career. So it seems to be harder these days to find a stable career in a cutting-edge lab like Philips Labs, Bell Labs, or IBM, DJ Watson of yesteryears. So the first question is, do you have any suggestions on how to build a fulfilling career where you can concentrate on developing certain expertise?
Thank you. Well, that would easily complete that question, I can tell you. Well, just thinking back 40 years, then remember, the semiconductor industry is mature today. Eh? And to give you a bit of an idea, when I started in 1979, the complete semiconductor turnover was 1% of what it is now. And yeah, the consequence is that in all those years, there's a little bit of low-hanging fruit being picked away. So yeah, that simply means the industry is mature. And I would like to one little idea that seems to be behind this question, and that is the word stable career. I had no stable career. Every 3-4 years, there's a big crisis in any company. I was once invited in a room with 500 of my colleagues, and 1 hour later, 400 of them had lost their job. That's the way things go, also in Europe. Yeah. In 2008, my company was 1 week before bankruptcy. Stable career is not so stable. Yeah. So, but when I read the question right, any suggestions how to build a good career, how to start a good career? Let me say there are a few no-nos. I would not advise to go into academia, and I would not advise to go to startups. First of all, I have a fundamental issue when people go too young into academia, because in my view, a professor educates students to work in industry. And so how can a professor really make a convincing case if he or she hasn't worked himself, say, 15-20 years in industry? So I would advise do not move into academia, and neither into startup. That's a sweatshop. You can learn a lot in stable, whatever is called stable industry. Yeah? A year ago, I wrote one of these columns, and there's a little plot in there. That's the industry research title, and that plot shows the portion of papers on ISSCC from academia and from industry. And if you look at that plot, you will see that for the first 4 decades, so the first 40 years, the ratio is 90% industry, 10% academia. And only in the last 10 years or so, the coin has flipped, and now it's basically 70-80% academia. So that plot suggests that it is not academia where the innovation takes place. The innovation takes place in industry. And so if you want a fulfilling career, ask yourself, where would I go? And a hint I can give you there is go to Journal Solid State Circuits and browse through that and check which papers come from industry and which papers you like for whatever they treat, whatever the subject is, and which industries are there. So that could give you a hint where you could look for a job. And there are, I won't name them, but there are really some very good industries where you can still develop yourself to become a good and rewarding good engineer. Well, let's see. Do not concentrate on a single expertise. Progress is inside an expertise, but revolution is on the overlap. So developing a certain expertise suggested in the title of in the question, don't overdo that. It is better to have knowledge of multiple domains and check what you can find there. That's much more interesting. It's impossible to know upfront what will be a fulfilling career. I have seen people who all at once became an HRM manager. Had a full education, PhD in microelectronics, and then they started being exposed a little bit to HRM, and in industry you can then easily move to that type of field. They did some courses, and they found their fulfilling career there. Yeah, so allow yourself some flexibility, because your ambitions will change when you grow older. The only thing you should think of is that you always realize yourself very, very good. What direction do I drop now? What am I not going to pursue? And because life is a one-way road. When you're 35, you cannot return to when you were 29. That's not possible. So make sure that you realize what you drop. Shall we have a look at the next question?
Yeah.
I'll answer the other
You
questions.
mentioned that. Yeah. So probably let's continue about how to looking for something different. So when do you know it's time for something different? After you join a company for a certain time?
I would say my experience is 4 to 5 years. 4 to 5 years, whether you do a team leader position or whether you work on PLM, whether you do device physics or so, that's roughly when steam is up. When there is when there is still a lot of work to do, but it's not you who's going to do that. Yeah. So change after 4 to 5 years. That keeps you fresh. You build up the multiple expertises that I mentioned in the previous question, and you become more and more valuable. Yeah. How do you know when it's time for something different? Well, obviously, all of you should watch the Stephen Jobs Stanford commencement address. You can find that on YouTube. There's a lot of truth there, and he says a number of things, and one of them matches with something I really learned, and that is, every day you go home, ask yourself, what did I learn today? And at the moment you get too dry with answers on that question, then avoid complacency and yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's head on to the next question. How would you navigate if you are hired for a set of skills, but you want to explore and expand your technical or non-technical skills in order to not to be pigeonholed?
Well, I would start at the moment you do your job interview. A lot of people start asking, what am I to do here? But only a few ask, what will I be doing in 2 or 3 years from now? And that is a very much more insightful question than asking where will I sit, what will I do? So obviously, in order to avoid being pigeonholed, you should already start asking what will I do in 2 to 3 years. And if you forgot that question, my dear friends, then you can still ask it at the moment you get your appraisal interview. Ask, what will I be doing in 2 or 3 years? That is very, very insightful. What your manager or the people who review you will say then, and that could be quite a bit of help to navigate. And then I would say, I see so many young people who complain, oh, I have to meet this deadline, oh, I'm in this project. Oh, my experience is there are many more options in a large company, not in a small company, of course, but there are many more options in a large company than you think. Be open to your management on your ambitions, look around, take initiative. You have more freedom than you think. Be bold. Yeah. If so, you are pigeonholing yourself normally. Yeah. It's not mostly. It's you can have a real moron as a boss, but normally you have the option to navigate your own career in a good company, in a large company. That's also one of the reasons that I say don't go into academia, don't go into startups, because if there's one place to be pigeonholed, that it's there. Okay. Coming. The next question.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah.
I can tell you, my friends, Kemeng is not of my opinion. I have a black screen, Kemeng.
Our fourth question is: do you have a recommendation to develop the relationship with your boss?
Well, I would do what I would feel necessary, and I would be open about that with my boss, and try to be as constructive as possible. But you know, if that doesn't work, then there is unfortunately not much to do, and basically solicit regularly what your manager thinks of you, and what he wants you to or he or she wants you to change. And I must say that I only found out after 6 years, but sometimes you have to ask your manager explicitly to formulate your weak points in his or her perception, because it sometimes turns out that things are different from what you expect. So be blunt and simply say at some point in an appraisal interview, now I hear you all these nice things saying about me, but now tell me what is the weakest point. And you might have a bad evening, but it is helpful in the end. Then there is strange psychology in managing a manager. Eh? So one of the very strange things is that suppose you have a disagreement with your boss on a certain topic, and suppose you're wrong and your manager is right. The strange thing is that in a lot of cases, your manager will feel okay with that. And while you might say, I have failed, and what will my manager think? It is the opposite in the management role, because the manager thinks, okay, I still can learn this young guy something. He is my pupil. I'll coach him. Yeah, he makes mistakes, but he's young, so let him grow. The other side of that is, if you run into a quarrel with your manager and you play it hardball and you win, you're right, then you have probably a major problem created for yourself. The manager feels afraid. The manager feels threatened. So be careful with that type of thing, and don't certainly when you're sure that you're right, do not seek the absolute confrontation. Let your manager convince himself instead of that you do it. And then there is one important message: always consider what his or her boundary conditions are. You know, being a bit sensitive for what a manager sees as a problem can help you understand certain decisions and can help you to grow there too. Okay, Meng, let's try the next slide and see whether we're not kicked out.
Yeah, so particularly how do you handle conflict with your boss or supervisor, and sometimes they may assign tasks that you really don't like to do. So how do you make yourself to do the task for this kind of task?
Always be prepared for departure, even if you believe you're in heaven. Always make sure that you have a list of people that you might give a phone call for the case that you run into real trouble and you want to have a backup. At the moment you have that list, and if you're convinced that if it's necessary you can find another place, that gives you some security, that gives you confidence to deal with. So any conflict, keep in mind what I said with the previous slide. Don't play a hardball. Always ask. Always be sensitive for the boundary conditions that your boss or supervisor has, because that leads to a certain common ground. Now, in general, but not only with your boss or your supervisor, also with your colleagues and even with your reports, there is a good way to start handling conflicts, and that is a little trick that comes from communication theory, and that requires to think about three aspects. You should ask yourself, from a colleague or from a boss, what do I dislike? Yeah, and then ask yourself, how do I feel about that? And then what would I draw as a consequence? So, for instance, somebody poking jokes at you that you don't like, say to him at a certain moment, your jokes hurt me, and that means that I will tend to avoid you. Yeah. Also with your boss, if there are things that you don't like, use in your communication this way of transferring the message. Name the behavior that you don't like. Yeah. Tell what that makes you feel, and tell what the consequences are. Yeah. And this is a way that takes out the sharp sides of any conflict that you might run into. So it's a very simple method. It is taught in many classes, and I just wanted to mention it here. Well, how do you make yourself do tasks you dislike? Now, my friends, this is a question of the youth of these days. Do you really think anybody ever asked me whether I liked the job I had to do? Come on, man. This belongs to life. It's a matter of discipline. Yeah. One way to deal with this is that's what I do. You know, there's a painter at this moment here in my house. I see him there, and so I have to do a lot of jobs I dislike. Yeah, stripping things and taking things apart and have to rebuild them again. My way of handling these type of things is I do first the short and easy tasks. That simply means that of the 10 things I have to do, I can finish 8 before dinner. And that means I have only 2 left. and that makes me easy handling disliking tasks. But there's another aspect to disliking tasks. You should ask yourself what hinders you to do that, because don't forget, if you do not do proper documentation of your part of your chip design, that's a nuisance to your colleagues. Most of us want to do smart things and so on, and most of us forget that half of the time that we spend is in things that are unpleasant. Yeah, filling in time schedules, filling in planning schemes, reporting, and so on and so on. All these things are things that at least I dislike. Yeah, but I realize that the things I dislike, if I don't do them, I will be a problem for my colleagues. Yeah? So never dislike a task.
Yeah.
Never dislike a task. Next question.
Okay, yeah. So let's talk about getting recognition from the company. So first, how do you position yourself to get promoted? And what if you don't get the promotion you feel you deserve?
Well, promotion is a difficult issue, because ask yourself first why you want a promotion, and is it only to fulfill self-esteem? Is it only to get this 20% salary raise? I can tell you, if that's the reason why you want a promotion, you're going to end up in a burnout. Yeah. There's only one reason why you want promotion, and that is because you want something outside yourself. You want something because you believe you can lead this team to the right direction, because you believe you can achieve with this team world-class performance. At the moment your promotion comes from purely egocentric motives, don't go for that. Yeah. I would say promotion is also something that is very culture dependent. Ask yourself, how does promotion work in your situation? In some companies, it's seniority is. Other companies, it's the sort of achievement, the number of ICs you sold, the customer feedback you get. And in some companies, and yes, these are there, it's a matter of pleasing your boss, pleasing your management, saying the right things that you don't believe, but you say it. Yeah. So that's a bit of an issue. The real way to get promotion is basically show initiative and be reliable and consistent. Because at the moment people recognize that in you, then I think you deserve a promotion, and you will be promoted for the right reasons. Because you should consider that if you are part of a team and the team needs a new team leader, and you want that promotion, and the management decides that your colleague will become the team leader, then this is inevitably a reason that you depart. It's better for you, it's better for the team, and it's better for the company. Yeah, so keep that in mind. If you openly opt for a promotion and you miss it, then it's over. Yeah. Next question.
Yeah. Yeah. So also about recognition, how do you objectively evaluate the value you bring to your company?
Well, objectively, that's a hard one. And my hint would be, look at your peers, your colleagues, your customers. Do you have to ask stuff to your colleagues? And what do your colleagues ask from you? And what do your customers ask from you? Do your customers request you to sit into a technical meeting? But don't underestimate the value of publications. Publications can be IEEE, General Solid State Circuits, but publications can also be drafting the application note for an important product. Yeah. These are typical things from which you can perceive some form of value, and but generally in all the years that I worked in industry, the value that you bring is sometimes very difficult to quantify. Perhaps some of you know that I did something on mismatch. Yeah, actually I never was granted a project to work on mismatch, but I simply was stubborn enough to do it. But do you think that any person in Philips or NXP factories ever came to me and said, you are valuable, my friend, because you saved us a lot of yield? Nobody, never. Yeah. So don't expect too much. Yeah. Another item from which you can evaluate your value is your boss asking you sometimes to do tasks that are a little bit above your job level? That's a pretty strong sign that you're on the right track. Yeah. So if you see that type of thing, then you're pretty okay.
Okay. Yeah. We continue the next question. So, can you share suggestions for getting better recognition for your work? And how do you stand out as an individual in a large organization like Philips or NXP or a huge design team, given that your contribution can be only a false measurement in many cases, just like you mentioned before?
I think the thing that you need to recognize, and it took me years before I recognized it, but recognition is something that comes from your inside. You know, requiring recognition means basically you feel insecure, and you know, it's not bad that you feel insecure. You should feel insecure. At the moment you're 2 years, 3 years in the company, you really feel insecure. The first day I entered Philips Research, I had a very good manager, a very good department head. And on the very first day, he said to me, my dear son, I was roughly the right age. My dear son, he said, let me warn you for one thing. The first year you will feel very stupid. And that was true. I really felt very stupid, let alone that I could talk about recognition. All these guys around me in Philips Research were so much better, so much stronger. But okay, you have to work hard, you have to give your best, and then step by step you will build down the insecurity, you will build up your feeling that something, that you mean something, and then you will notice that after perhaps 1 year, 1.5 years, this guy comes in with 10 years experience and says, hey, you Marcel, didn't you look at this issue? What is it exactly? Yeah, and you know, and then the first things start to come up, and you build up your recognition. So don't ask for recognition, and don't look for getting better recognition, because realized recognition comes from your inside. Yeah, recognition is the other side of insecurity. Yeah, so show initiative, excel, be reliable and be consistent, be honest, recognize your colleagues. Yeah, start from today. Yeah, to tell every day one colleague that you appreciate what he or she did for you, even if it's helping you out with your coffee at the moment you are really working. Show appreciation, show even appreciation to your boss. Yeah, tell him, thank you for taking care of this issue. Yeah. So really, these are the things that really help. So is that agreed, my 400 so many friends? From today onwards, every day you improve the world a little bit by showing every day a little bit of recognition for one of your colleagues, even perhaps for your partner at home. That is also useful. Next question coming.
Okay, yeah. So let's change a bit of the topic now. So when do you negotiate? And can you share with us the most difficult or interesting negotiation you ever have been involved in?
Well, negotiation is very culture dependent. Western style negotiation typically requires 2 dimensions. So if you want to buy my car and I want to sell my car, then you say I offer you $500, and I say, okay, my car is 20 years old, so I want $800. But you know, there is that's a one-dimensional negotiation. That's just you find the right price or not. Yeah. Real negotiation means that you want my car and you have no more than $500 to spend, but you say I'll buy your car for $500, but I'll be your taxi driver for the next year. Yeah, you know, that's a second dimension. Yeah. So well, I had prepared a little negotiation situation, but we are running otherwise out of time. So let's perhaps do that, but go to the next to the next slide.
Okay. Yeah. So this question: do you agree that a breakthrough often requires thinking outside the box, or if so, what do you do to be creative?
Well, when I read this question, the steam was coming out of my ears. This is an example, my dear friends, of where there is really some soft skills needed. There are 2 problems with this question. First of all, it's a closed form question, which means that from its syntax you can only say yes or no. That's not. Avoid that type of questions, except when you are really in a cornered and you basically are on a break or go situation. And then, of course, there is this awful management slang, thinking outside the box, that's only used by people who never did that. Yeah. So no, that's and actually the answer is no. Yeah. So I would refer you back to my column on industry research. I listed there the forms of creativity, and there's a lot of forms of creativity, and I'm not going to deal with that here. Perhaps another time. But evolution, that's what we saw in Moore's law. Every 2-3 years there was a new generation. You would have faster CMOS, and at some point CMOS was fast enough to make it RF CMOS. Yeah. Then there's serendipity. That is the unexpected observation from which you draw a good creative conclusion. Now then is the pushing the limits. Just how accurate can I make a resistor ladder? Yeah. What do I need to do for that? Yeah. There's the crystal ball. Yeah. The Steve Jobs who envision how they want a smartphone to look like. Yeah. Fertilization. That's what I earlier mentioned. Don't stick into one discipline, but use multiple disciplines.
So, next question: how do you win over difficult colleagues?
Again, a little trick from communication theory. Keep in mind that if you have colleagues with problems, whether they are your reports or whether you are your colleagues or even your team or even your boss, then there is basically two reasons why you might have a problem with them, and that's basically unable or unwilling. So if one of your reports is unable to do is not doing its task the way you want to have it done, then ask yourself, is this colleague unable? Then help him. Or is he unwilling? And then basically talk to them and try to find out why somebody who is able to do a task is not willing to do it. Is he seeing the task as something he dislikes? Yeah. Then talk to him and make him realize that although he dislikes the task is important for other people. So I managed to break through, say, difficult colleagues, or how should I formulate it in proper English? I managed to connect to colleagues where I had problems. At the moment, I understood whether the problem was more in the ability of a person or in the willingness of him. Yeah. So keep that in mind when you have to deal with it. And then obviously, behave better, be polite, be helpful, show patience. Yeah. But never forget you're in competition. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. And yeah, also there are some colleagues who are very political savvy. So how do you handle them?
Well, 40 years of experience, most of them dig their own grave. and if you see that this type of behavior is appreciated by your management, then you're simply in the wrong company. Yeah? And again, how do you handle them on a daily life? Be strictly formal. Yeah, formally correct. Yeah, no more. These politically savvy colleagues sometimes have the habit of gossiping. Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good indication that you have a politically savvy colleague. Gossiping. Never engage in that. If you're really bold, then you confront the person and say, sorry, my dear friend, but what you're doing I don't appreciate. Yeah, you remember the three elements: behavior, feeling, and consequence. Yeah, that would typically be a situation where you say, your gossip makes me sick and I don't want to talk to you anymore. That's a very clear message. May even cure the guy. No, I would say little chance, but sometimes it works. Yeah. Next question.
Yeah. Okay, so let's shift our focus to personal development now. So, what are your suggestions for achieving a better work-life balance?
That's one of the more easy questions. First of all, realize that that if you have to work too long with too much stress, then either you lack talent or you have a bad fit to the job. Basically you should ask. It's not a problem if you have to work on a project for 2-3 weeks, pretty long and pretty stressful, but that should not be the regular situation. Yeah, the regular situation is that you should work 8 hours a day and that you should feel a pleasant amount of stress. Feeling completely unstressed, but you should feel a pleasant amount of stress. And if you have to work too long to make ends meet, and if you have to suffer too much stress with that, I would really I should ask myself the question, am I doing the right thing here? Yeah. So in the end, I was 7 years a department head, and in the end, I realized that to make the next step, I would have to suffer more. I would have to have a worse family life, and I basically told my boss, okay, I did this for 7 years, and and I'm not going to pursue a next step in my career. I want to step back. I want to become a researcher again, and so that was the reason And he said, you did a very good job. We would have loved you to have you higher up, but it would have meant that I would have to move to the United States with my family, and that's not what you always want to do. And then basically you have to take a decision to move away from what you perhaps would love to do. For a daily life, I would say draft a personal agenda and stick to it. For instance, that's my agenda. Eh? I always insisted that we had morning breakfast together, with the complete family. Because the lunch is of course not possible, and dinner was also difficult, but at least have a certain structure in your life. I ended up at some moment with very, very bad Saturday headaches, and then I realized that I was basically full steam continuing till Friday late afternoon, and that was basically causing my headaches. And so from that moment onwards, I made sure that in my agenda there was always some cryptic placeholder, and basically I went to the library and I would read literature. I would be doing some report writing. I would make sure that I forgot my mobile phone, and so that's there. And then be strict on eating and sleeping times. Keep, even under stress, keep your daily pace. And for instance, one of the never eat at your workplace. Move around, go to the canteen, take a stroll around the lake in my situation, but never at the moment you start eating at your workplace, you took the first step to a magnificent burnout. Don't do that. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, but I think it's not an easy one to achieve. Yeah. So move to the next question. So, what are your secrets for time management in a data-driven working environment? So, particularly in our area, so we may have quite a lot of experience in catching the deadline from tape out.
Well, what I earlier said, stay on a fixed sleep, eat, work scheme. Typically 90 minutes up, 30 minutes off. So 90 minutes intensive simulation, layout, or whatever more. Then basically do 30 minutes something else. Go for a coffee, have a chat with your colleagues, look a little bit around in the EE Times or whatever more. And basically, I basically only took extra hours after dinner from 7 to 9 in the evening, and that basically was it. At the moment you work after 9, I cannot do anything anymore. I know other people have other rhythms, but I'm typically a morning person, so not an evening person. So I made sure I was at 8:30 at my work, and basically this keeps you healthy. Deadlines. The problem with deadlines is that people very often only in a very late phase realize that they have a deadline. And the first thing what you should do at the moment you see a deadline is ask yourself, is this deadline realistic for me? And make in a very early phase the consequences clear that you see ahead. Can I realize this with the quality that I want to do? Can I realize this with the documentations I need? What are the risks of errors that I have to take? And who takes the responsibility for that? And be honest and be realistic and propose a realistic plan. That's and don't do that at the moment you are 2 weeks before your deadline. Be realistic and do it early on. Make a planning and go back to your boss or your team leader or your project manager and say, this is how I see what we can do, and what is the realistic way out here.
Yeah. Okay, so next one, can you share with us one of your most stressful periods in your career and how did you handle that?
Well, handling stress, I used a lesson that I learned at the moment. I was in management training. One afternoon, we came back to the room where we were sitting, and on the floor there were these mattresses that they used for martial arts stuff. And on the mattresses there was this guy dressed up in his white jacket, his white trouser, and a belt. And he was an Aikido trainer. And Aikido is a self-defense sport from Japan, I think. And he did a few exercises with us and so on. And then at some moment he said to we were 12 or so, he said to the strongest and heaviest guy that was half a head higher than he was, he said, come on, take a good grip on me, yeah, make sure that you really keep me in a tight grip, and that I cannot move anything that you would not like me to do. And so this guy stands behind him, pulls the arms of the Aikido teacher behind the back, and other arm goes around his throat, and the teacher is suffocating a little bit, and the teacher basically murmurs, well, perhaps this was not such a smart idea to do. Perhaps I should have taken another person to do this. But he said, that won't help me. Yeah. Instead of thinking of what I did perhaps wrong, or perhaps what I should have done differently, let me ask myself the question, what can I still do? What are my degrees of freedom? I cannot move my head. I cannot move my arms, but I can move my legs. And 1 second later, my tall, strong colleague lay in front of him on the floor. Yeah, and that was the most valuable lesson I learned in my management role. Yeah, ask yourself always, what are the degrees of freedom? I was managing the analog design department in the days when digital went crazy, and my management came to me and said, no, look here, today you're 40%, next year we pay 20%, and the year after 10%, and then it's basically done with you. And I could argue like look at the successes we had, and so on, no way out. Yeah, but you should ask yourself, what are still my degrees of freedom? And I realized that the only way I could convince people is by playing it over the external side. So I made sure I had 27 IEEE papers, and that quite a lot of people in industry said to my boss, wow, you've got a good analog design. Wow, yeah, and that Microsoft and Intel told my boss, we really are appreciating what you do on USB 2. That is really great. At that moment, I won the battle. Yeah, not by going back to the history, but what were my degrees of freedom? And I found them in a very aggressive publishing regime, and seeking external partners that would tell my boss how good my department was. And that saved my department, and that basically lay even to a certain extent the ground for anything. Again, look at Steve Jobs, what he says about that. It's really, really great. Now, next few questions, and then we go to Q&A, yeah?
Yeah, so, yeah, sure. So, let's talk about leadership here. So, as a mentor to many people, can you share with us what the most rewarding experience there has been for you?
Well, I must say, you feel great when you present at ISSCC, but at the moment, one of your younger people that you coached For instance, my Leuven student 2 years ago, when he presented on ISSCC, you know, then that is even a better feeling than when you stand there yourself. That's really true. So I for instance, my youngest daughter, she presented, she did her PhD defense, and she did it in a way that the older professors that had to interrogate her really said, we have never seen such a good PhD defense. You know, that makes you more proud, as if you would have done it yourself. That is the marvelous thing when you grow older, that it turns out that if you see the people that you coached and the people that you raised and the people that you helped, if you see them performing well, that is better than a better feeling than when you did it yourself. Which brings us to question number 17.
Yeah. So, yeah, how do you practice leadership skills at an early stage of the career for the junior engineer or professions?
Let me start at the bottom here. Eh? Don't confuse managers with leaders. Managers are completely different type of people than leaders. Yeah, managers have an internal goal. Managers want to get the budgets matched, want to get the people hired, and so on. Managers have internal goals. You recognize managers because they operate internally. Leaders because they have a goal outside the group, outside the company, perhaps. Yeah, I wanted to have the best analog electronics team in the world. I was not satisfied with just being a department head of a good analog design group that where the budgets met and so on. No, I wanted to lead in the ISSCC. I wanted the ISSCC technical committee back for contributions. That was my goal. Leaders look for an external goal, not for an internal goal. And then I go to the first one, and that is something I mentioned my first boss, where I had a very, very great esteem for. And one day he came in my office and he had a little tile. I don't know whether that is useful in other countries, but in the Netherlands we give each other these little tiles, and there is a quote on that tile. And the quote on the tile that he brought me was this quote: "The best leader is he of whom people will say we did it ourselves." And that's, I think, 3,000 years old. Yeah, Lao Tzu.
Yeah.
Yes. And you know, that's it. That is really it. Yeah, it's not you, the leader, who is there. Yeah. So at the moment I saw this former US president, it was directly obvious he is the opposite of this. Yeah. And look around in the world. Yeah. Look where the great leaders are. Why is Merkel, the German chancellor, recognized as one of the top leaders in the world? It's not because she emphasizes herself. It is because she emphasizes her country, and he emphasizes the EU, and in a broader sense she emphasizes the world. Yeah. And that is a very important message to keep that in mind. Yeah, leaders understand capabilities, needs, and fears of people, and one thing you really see where you've got real good leaders can identify talents in a broad sense. Yeah, and that's a few things. So how do you practice leadership? Well, you can practice management skills. But leadership, you have to discover. You have really to realize yourself. Are you identified by your peers as the person that takes you forward? Because your peers will recognize whether you are obeying Lao Tzu's rule. Yeah, is the leader of a team is the guy or the girl who basically makes the team succeed, and not himself or herself. Last slide.
Okay, yeah. So
Oh,
finally, we'll talk about networking.
I'm almost a pastor with that last one, eh? You know.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to start a church. Don't worry.
No. So yeah. So what is your advice for networking, especially for junior faculty or engineers?
Well, networking is relevant, but it should go naturally. Don't push that too hard. Is my advice. Don't push that too hard. I think I mentioned in the first slide that you should within 4 to 5 years you should change topics, and you should look for another field to grow. If you do that, then your network will grow. If you start publishing, if you take up a role in IEEE, so we come to the next two questions. If you take a role in IEEE, you volunteer there. You volunteer also in less pleasant things, then your networking will go automatically. You don't make it a bucket list thing. Yeah, it should go naturally. And one person has a network of 5 people and operates excellent in that, and other person has a network of 500 people, or how many LinkedIn connections do I sometimes see, and it's miserable. Yeah, so let go with the flow, let it go naturally.
Okay, yeah. So
let's take the last two slides. Let the last two questions together.
Yeah. So what have been your highlights of your IEEE SSCS involvement? How about your particularly for your early involvement? And do you wish you were involved sooner?
Well, my highlight in IEEE solid state circuits was, of course, my two terms as a distinguished lecturer, and if I may say, I volunteer for a third term, friends. Yeah, that was really very, very, very pleasant to do, and obviously I always enjoyed reviewing stuff. I had a little problem the early days because I had angered a colleague who was pretty high up in IEEE. So the first 10 years. First 15 years, I had very little involvement, and even that went so far that I never ever was invited for a technical program committee of any conference at all, not even for a mismatch conference. So yeah, okay. Sometimes you meet people that help you, and sometimes you meet people that don't help you. And in the IEEE, I am very obliged to Professor Woolley, to Professor Sanson. These are typically people and professors that Professor Steyart that really pushed me forward. Professor Sordini, I should not forget. He was very, very instrumental in my career at a very crucial point. Because my very first, my only mismatch paper in the Journal of Solid State Circuits was initially rejected by the 2 reviewers, and so I managed to use a bit of diplomacy and I managed to get the editor-in-chief there, Professor Sordini, and he allowed me that paper, and I'm still awfully grateful for him to do that. Well, and that, yeah, my personal life, as I said already, Journal of Solid State Circuits, IEEE SSCS, concentrate on the real thing, my friends. Don't visit all these boogaloo conferences where there are only the authors of a session in the room. I won't say ISCAs, but you know what I mean. I won't say prime conferences, but you know what I mean. Yeah, concentrate on the real thing, my friends. There is too much boogaloo written already in this world, and I going to read all of that. Just stick to IEEE SSCS and Journal of Solid State Circuits. Without that, I wouldn't be here now. That's it.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So this concludes the interview. So thanks, Marco, for the inspiring conversations. Personally, I learned a lot from here. So now we will continue to move on to the Q&A sections. So remember, you can use the Q&A section on your dashboard to ask the questions. So we have the first questions from the audience. So how would you navigate if you are hired for a technical job, but eventually sometimes you want to get into the product management roles?
Basically how to change roles.
Yeah, so from technical job to product management, also management roles inside the company.
Now, there are a few clues in what I earlier said. There is a lot of maneuverability, and so, for instance, when you want to move to a product role, at the moment you have exposure to those people. Offer them your help. Get involved with that. Volunteer to do a few things that they don't like, and gradually you can shift into that role, and don't overestimate that type of stuff, because I have seen a lot of people who were very enthusiastic for role A or role B, and at the moment they really ran into it, they started realizing what the consequences it was.
Okay, so next questions. So what is your recommendation for a PhD student to boost the career through networking? Should they send an invitation to a professor that they don't know at all?
So is the question to get a PhD a PhD position, or from a PhD position to a industry position?
No, I think he is already a PhD student, but
yeah.
His question is what's your recommendation to boost the career after graduation through networking?
To boost the career, well, yeah. You know, I would be very careful with boosting careers. Boosting career mostly ends up in a burnout. You know, you should keep the somewhat more Eastern mentality there, and basically see what comes on your way, and be patient, and take initiatives, and make sure that what you do is consistent, and what you do is useful to other people. Do not stress too much boosting the career. At the moment, you do diligently your work, you take initiatives, you come up with good proposals, you act in a modest and reserved way towards your peers, and so on. You know, that is sufficient boost. Yeah. If you really start pushing, then that will very, very easily work against you. Don't do that. Just in a quiet and respectful way, and do your work good. Take initiatives. Look for options. That's the best way to move forward.
Okay, so next one. So earlier in the interview, so you mentioned finishing easy tasks first. So one audience actually want you to elaborate more on this finishing easy tasks first, and compare the approach of working on hard tasks first. So compare these two, finishing easy tasks and against working on the hard problems first?
Well, that's my way, eh? So everybody, you have to find your own way in this. But my way is when I have a large number of tasks in front of me, and I face deadlines, and I have these uneasy things and so on. I basically start eliminating the simple things, eh? So the things that take me hours or whatever more, even if I really hate to do them, yeah, because that's what you normally have. Eh? There are many interesting things to do, and the things that you dislike, you shift away from yourself. Then all at once it turns out that this bit of documentation you have to finish at the same moment that you have to tape out, and this and that and whatever more. So that's my way of dealing with this type of stress. I take the disliked topics and the short topics. I take them first, and make sure that my mind is clean, and that I can fully concentrate on the last or the two last big issues that I need to deal with. But that's just my personal way of dealing with it. Eh?
Okay, and the next one. So also during the interview, you mentioned that we always need to be prepared for leaving. So you probably emphasized for quite several times. So can you elaborate more on how to fully prepare for that?
Now, I always had, you know, when you walk around in life and you meet people, you do some networking, as you mentioned, you work in IEEE, and you hear from your colleagues, you hear from your old study mates, and so on, and you then there are these little things. Eh? One of your former study friends works now at company X and says, oh, well, the pay is not great, but I have such a freedom here to find out what I want and to work with the way I have. And or another friend says, oh, this where I work, I get marvelous pay, but they expect me every Saturday and Sunday morning to work. You know, make a note of this type of little things. Yeah, ask in a little bit hidden manner. Ask your friends, ask your former colleagues, ask the colleagues that enter your new company, the company where you work, new colleagues that you get. Ask them quietly, silently, how was that? How was it over there at company Y? Why did you go? Take notes there. Yeah. So basically, you have a little bit an idea where you might go, and say on a conference when you have a presentation, or when you meet people and you meet older people there, and you can give a hint like, yes, perhaps working in your company is also interesting. And if the senior person says, yeah, would you be interested? Well, okay, you say, perhaps can we exchange business cards? And you know, that is the way you build up. You build up a list where you have 2-3 addresses, 2-3 contacts that are really top priority, and you have, for instance, 5-6 other contacts that you say, this could be interesting at a certain moment. So open your ears, ask questions, be interested in what people did. That is always a good idea to stay in contact. Ask them what people were doing, how they felt about it. That improves your contact with the person, and it gives you some hints on whether that might be an alternative for you.
Okay, so the next one. So you mentioned that you don't recommend to go to startup at an early stage. So can you elaborate more on this point? Why not going to a startup?
Well, my experience with startups is that they are very focused on bringing in the first products. They are very they are small, so a lot of the company functions that are there, like HRM, like the sales department, like the purchasing department, like procurement, research, development. All of that isn't there. Yeah, you're all in one person, and you do not have the persons around you that can tell you, that can give you the flavor of what is really the essence of a certain job, of a certain function. So you work there 4 or 5 years, you almost reach a burnout. In the best case, you escape with some money, but 9 out of 10 startups in our field disappear within a number of years, and then basically you stand a little bit alone without really working on the general aspects of your career. So I would say, first go to a larger company, see how a company is run, yeah, see how that works, see what marketing means, see how product development is done, how quality assurance is done, and if you have mastered, or at least have experienced a number of these aspects, well, then you may be not only more valuable to a startup, but you can also look at it with a little bit more reflection, yeah, and you will know much earlier in your work in the startup whether the startup is going anywhere, or whether you better look out for another job.
Okay, yeah, so we will have our final questions here. So
Well,
what is your advice for dealing with colleagues who discourage you or provide negative feedback, or both in academia or industry?
so negative feedback.
No, yeah, the colleagues who provide a lot of negative feedbacks or discourage you.
Well, my first remark is, any form of appraisal, I assume the negative feedback is in the appraisal, is a matter of a difference between two people. Yeah, when your boss says you're not working hard enough, that is perhaps the reason for that is that your boss feels that he has to work too hard. Yeah, you know, a lot of negative feedback might come from the fact that the person who gives that feedback feels to be on the other side of what you do. You know, when you work very diligently, and for instance, one of the things, negative feedback things that I hear coming up pretty often at the moment, you are coming from a PhD with a PhD into industry, then pretty often the negative feedback these PhDs get is, here in industry we are not always interested in finding the root causes for certain things. If a product is good enough. Good is good enough. Yeah, and that is a sort of negative feedback that can be expressed in much stronger terms than I now do. But that's a sort of negative feedback that you very often encounter, and ask yourself the question: how can I deal with that? If in this example, you really want to make sure that you want to dig into things and so on, then be transparent. Be transparent to your reviewer and say honestly, my style of working is to find out this and this better, and how can we deal with that? Yeah, and very often when you're transparent on that, and your boss is transparent on what his or her expectations are, then you have a common ground. Then at least you agree where you want to disagree. And in that sense, a negative feedback needs not necessarily to be a negative judgment of your piece. It can very often mean that the blend of different styles of working, ways of approaching, is different in the company you're working. And then ask yourself and ask your boss at some point, can both of us live with the compromise that we have? And if you can't live with the compromise, then it's time for departure.
Okay, yeah. So that's all for the Q&A sessions. Once again, thanks Marcel for your participation in this webinar. So I learned a lot from this interview. So now I'll pass the mic back to Abira.
Thank you, Kameng. Thank you, Marcel, for a great webinar. Just a reminder, the webinar slides and video recording will be posted on the SSCS Resource Center. It will be posted within a few days. And in the chat, I posted a link if you'd like to earn a certificate of attendance. I'll put it in there again. And thank you everyone for attending. For more information on future webinars, you can visit the SSCS website. Thank you.